Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's executive search, BIPOC executive search. This is our second live series. I am your host, Stacey Ann Buchanan, and I am joined by my incredible teammates today. First, we've got Helen Mcconan. Next, we've got Candace Frederick. And we've got Shirley Lee. Welcome, everyone. How are you doing today?
Great.
Oh, thank you.
Doing well.
Awesome. Before we start, we want to humbly acknowledge the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. I am going to introduce our panelists today by giving a brief bio on who they are. So first up, we've got Helen Mcconan. Helen is a partner at BIPOC Executive Search. She brings 17 years of experience in executive search recruitment and has built a proven track record of identifying, attracting, assessing, and hiring top diversity talent across North America. Throughout her career, Helen has successfully concluded searches across multiple sectors where mission-critical talent were sought, each proving to be key additions for clients. She brings an authentic approach to the search process, adding value to client organizations, candidates, and communities. Helen holds diplomas in business marketing and business administration from George Brown. She's a member of the Italian Chamber of Commerce of Ontario and is multilingual, fully bilingual in English and Italian, and conversationally proficient in French and Spanish. Hi, Helen.
Hi, Stacey Ann. Hi, everybody.
Next up, we've got Candace Frederick. Candace brings 15 years of experience working within educational institutions and for community agencies. Born in Grenada and raised in Toronto, she has spent much of her career in conversations with equity-seeking groups about access to resources in some form or another. Her work is rooted in strength-based practices, equity frameworks, and trauma-informed perspectives. Working as a college instructor and a workshop facilitator has allowed her to share her knowledge of anti-oppressive practice, anti-Black racism, and healing practices. Candace draws upon her work as a mental health provider to take a relational and systemic approach to recruiting. She believes that the roots to systemic change must involve an acknowledgement of the past and of harm if we are to move toward healing and wellness. She holds a Master of Counseling Psychology degree from the University of Toronto and remains committed to making more space for liberatory practices. Hi, Candace.
Hi, Stacey Ann.
I feel like I'm just like, whoo, breathing as we go through. Okay, we're keeping it real. Next up, we've got Shirley Lee. Shirley is a social justice informed psychologist licensed in Oregon, USA. Working as a consultant at BIPOC Executive Search, she focuses on recruitment, training, and EDI audits within higher education and nonprofit sectors. Ladies, welcome. Shirley, hi, everyone.
Thank you.
You know, as we spoke before, I'm like, the first part getting through is always like a rush for me. I want the audience to know I'm very open about talking about my anxiety. I do struggle with anxiety, but it's something that I've navigated through. So every time, the first rush is always like, and then I'm breathing through as we go. And we're going to be doing that today because today we are going to be talking about new job possibility and how to know if this organization is for you. So we're going to dive into the questions. And the first question is, what are some questions that talent can ask during their interview process to ensure that this organization is for them? I'm going to throw that over to you, Helen.
Thank you, Stacey Ann. It's a really important question. And I think that before a candidate even starts to pen together questions to ask, they need to define what an organization looks like, or at least what's important and what's ideal for them. The team here, you all know that I love a list. And I always encourage individuals to create that must-have list of things that are important to define what that organization should look like for them. So for myself personally, I love a collaborative and creative environment, which I found here. So one of the questions that I would ask, if that would be the same case for individuals out there, is, how do teams collaborate? How do they interact with one another? Is there cross-pollination opportunities so that you're not necessarily only focused on your one function? So that would be one of the questions that I would ask. One of the other things that is obviously very important in any candidate and talent when they're looking at and considering an opportunity is research. So finding out about the organization itself, keeping up with any trends, news, and history will define some of the questions that they may have. Perhaps there's a new leader in place in the organization. So what is that person like? What is their leadership style? So those are a couple of questions that kind of come top of mind for me, Stacey Ann.
That's great, Helen. I identify with that a lot. I love the idea of writing down a list. I don't think a lot of people, I think in this world, like with a lot of technology, a lot of people don't do the old school thing of writing down a list. Even though you can just write it on your phone, sometimes it's like, I'll just save a tab and I'll keep going. But writing down, I always say that when you write things down, it is a form of affirmation, and you're writing it out there. It's like you're speaking it out. So write things down. I'm going to move this on to you, Shirley. What are your thoughts on this?
Thanks, Stacey Ann. So Helen mentioned a number of things that's already on my mind. In terms of values alignment, having a good, solid understanding of who I am as a person, what I represent, what are my values. It's important to get those things aligned first, and then find organizations that fit with those values. So it's brilliant that Helen indicated collaboration, because I'm the same. I know in our culture, we think that it's competition that breeds innovation. But for me, I'm my best self when I'm collaborating, when I'm brainstorming, when I'm throwing ideas out there with other people. Other things that I look for is organizations that are mandate or mission focused. Do they have a strong why? And does that why call to me? Right? Because it's important to feel something about the organization, because it's a lot of work that you're putting in there. You're spending a lot of time. And so if you don't have a strong why, you might come out having a sense of purposelessness of why you're in there in the first place. Other things I look for, does this organization help develop me personally? In addition to professional growth, yes, but also on a personal level. Are they there to cultivate my inner world? Do they allow me to bring in other sources of wisdom, like cultural wisdom or ancestral wisdom? And lastly, things that I look for is, are there opportunities to celebrate successes? Sure, we're talking about how we're going to move the organization forward, but we need to celebrate even small milestones, because that's what keeps us energized and motivated in reaching our long-term goals. Keep in mind that everything we do is part of the long game. If we don't celebrate successes along the way, it's going to be really hard and tedious to get to that finish line. And finally, I want to wrap up with, in thinking about what you're going to share, how you're going to ask these things are just as important. So ensure that you demonstrate your thought leadership, your philosophical approach to the work by looking at how you might ask these questions. And so if we're looking at a mandate, if being part of a mandate-driven organization is important to you, when you pose that question to the hiring committee, make it known that you are very invested in that organization. It is what you need to feel alive, to feel energized and motivated to do that kind of work. And it's the kind of energy that you need to bring other people along. And that's why getting to know what the mandate, mission, or organization is important to you. So those are some of the things that come to mind as I'm thinking about this question, Stacey Ann.
Those are awesome. And you raised a really good point when you said, do they celebrate successes? Because that moves forward to the long run. And I remember I was working on this TV show. For a lot of people who don't know, my background is in film and television. And every day we'll celebrate a member of the crew. And what we did was we had a chain. And it was like, this is today, it's about your day. And this is why I'm celebrating you. You do this work. Like if you go and get my food, whether it's the craft service, whether it's it's locations, whether it's the hairstylist, we all pick someone and we celebrate that person. And everyone looked forward to that. It was so exciting, you know? So I love that you really say that. It really does. It goes along with saying, give people their flowers while they're here. Just give them their flowers and acknowledge them. Candace, what are your thoughts on that question?
Thanks, Stacey Ann, for the question. And I very much related to what Helen and Shirley already had to say around values. And I think for me, with this question, it's really about the conversation that you're having with yourself about what is important. And so a few questions come to mind in terms of that process. And, you know, maybe it's writing things down. Maybe you like to be in conversation with others. I certainly do. But, you know, one question that I thought of was, you know, what have you been a part of that has made you feel good? Are there particular ways of learning that are particularly supportive for you? And I like to ask a question around, is there a particular kind of impact that you're looking to have? And I think, you know, thinking about inclusion is also important, and as well as who you might want to work alongside of and who you might want to learn from in that specifically. And then I think when you have some of those answers and things are a little bit clearer, you can then start to formulate some interview questions that, you know, will be geared towards your values or will give you a better sense of organizational priorities and, even more importantly, organizational culture. So specific to me and my process, I like to know how organizations demonstrate equity or what their understanding of equitable relationships might be. And I would love to say that I came up with that on my own, but I came up with that question through conversation with other people in my life. And I think that regardless of whether you hear a full answer or you don't hear a full answer, you get information. And then you can ask yourself, did this resonate with me? Because ultimately, I think this conversation is about values, workplace culture, and really just thinking about, you know, what you can glean about the environment, what you can glean about the leadership. So that's what I would offer.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you, Candace. Those are really great points. And your answer really brings me into the second one, where the second question is me really pitching a scenario to you. So a candidate asks all the right questions during an interview process to ensure that the organization that they're interested in is the right one for them. The candidate seems satisfied with all the answers and takes the job. A few weeks into the position, they find that many of the solutions provided during the interview conflict with what they heard during the interview process and are rethinking if that organization is truly for them. So this question has two parts. So A, what is the best approach that the candidate should take in bringing this to the attention of the person who hired them? And Candace, I'm going to start with you just because we finished off with you.
Okay, sure, no problem. So, I mean, I first want to say that this is like something that I've, you know, struggled with, you know, myself, and I'm sure lots of people struggle with. So I'll offer, you know, a few thoughts about that. And I think when you're a new employee, you're trying to figure out context and sometimes you're still working through a couple of things as you adjust to a new environment. But I think for me, like definitely thinking about, confidentiality would be a bit of a factor. And I think I would also ask about maybe existing mechanisms to address issues should they arise. So, is there a policy that might speak to this particular issue and maybe lay out a process, and maybe that information could help to provide some guidance? Is there a non-judgmental space where, you can start to like engage? And reflecting on some of my experiences, like I've worked in a lot of unionized environments, and I know that's not everyone's reality, but it has meant that there is a bit of an existing mechanism to start having that conversation if I'm noticing that things are happening. And then I think it's important to also talk to peers or talk to colleagues and really try to understand and get your experience, validated, and start to tease out whether, this is about, an interpersonal issue or this is an issue that is systemic in nature. Ultimately, I think that, it's in identifying what level the issue is coming from that will give you some idea as to what steps you need to take to address it. So that's what I would offer.
Thank you, Candace. Shirley, what can you add to that?
I feel like my answer is all wrapped up in Candace's already. She put it so nicely together. Just to, I guess, reiterate some of the pieces that's on my mind is to recognize that this is a high stakes, very risky situation, right? You just started a new job. You've barely understood the political context and climate of the work environment. You may not have built the social capital that's needed to foster allyship. So this is a challenging situation because of the riskiness of it. And so my recommendation in all risky situations is to first find psychological safety and grounding first. So taking a step away from the work environment and going to your tribe. I've been told by a good friend of mine to always build an informal advisory council or committee. So these are people who are your family members, your friends, your colleagues, people who you trust, people who you feel safe with, and who can offer you an honest opinion on something. And to approach those people to do three things. The first is to express your frustrations, your disappointment, resentment. Like Candace said, you need that validation in that very moment. It is hugely important. The second piece is to get your reality reflected back at you, right? Have a reality check. A lot of times in these scenarios, there's a lot of gaslighting happening, meaning that you're the one, even though you're victimized, you're the one being held responsible for change. And you're the one being told that there's nothing actually wrong going on. So it's really important to go to these people to say, hey, can you look at the situation with me and tell me that there is something systemically wrong going on for me, and it's not something internally that I'm reacting to, right? So that's really important to have somebody say, yeah, systemically, there's something very toxic about the environment. And then once you have those pieces, right, have the validation, have the reality check, and then you go deep inside and you pull from the best parts of you. And I just know that once you feel that groundedness, you'll know exactly what it is that needs to be done. And even if you don't know, you're at a much better place to go seek out that information.
Wow, absolutely. I think that's so awesome. I think for the longest while, we've always heard about creating a community. And I love that you talked about and having an informal and like advisory board, like people that you can go to and you can talk to, because I think sometimes in a situation like this, you're the victim. You'll feel like you're the victim in that situation, but then you feel like you can't turn to anyone. So having that support is so, so, so important. I really echo off everything you and Candace have said. Helen, what can you add to that?
I mean, what can I add? My colleagues have done a phenomenal job already in adding that. I think the only piece that I would add is the fact that these scenarios do happen. It's happened to me. I'm sure it's happened to a lot of individuals who are watching right now, and it's one of those things that it's if I knew then what I know now, what would I have done differently? And that's perhaps what I would offer. It is exactly what both Candace and Shirley have already mentioned. Is around really stepping back into the situation, understanding the riskiness of it, and then being tactful in how to approach it. So having that personal group, that personal tribe to confide in and chat with, and I guess distill what the situation was, because for myself, I didn't speak up. And I chose not to speak up, and I chose to stay with the organization. What would I have done differently is everything that Candace and Shirley would have said, and also to help the organization move forward is to move out of the reputation that they have right now internally, if that is the case, and rectify the situation for any future hires. I'm a big believer of, you're here today, but you need to continue to build a path for the people who are coming behind you. And so any situation like that, and this is my opinion, obviously, is to, do the work for now, but also keep in mind kind of the people who are coming behind you, and any future hires.
Absolutely, I echo that as well. And I'm just gonna, because the second question is roughly around what you're talking about, Helen. It's the second one is, how can the organization rectify this to ensure they retain the candidate? So I'm gonna start with you, Helen.
I mean, I think organizations, when it comes to retention, when it comes to retaining individuals and rectify these types of situations, it's a collective effort. It's not just the hiring manager, it's not just human resources, but it's everyone involved. That is the best way to rectify that situation. And again, rebuild or mend the reputation that the organization has.
Thank you. Shirley?
Thanks, Stacey Ann. Helen, when you said it's a collective responsibility, it just breathed life into me. I truly believe that it is every single person's responsibility within the organization to retain individuals, right? Even if you're not the manager or the within a director role, if you're a colleague, if you're a peer, you have just as much of a responsibility. That's part of the collective care. I would say that in addition to that piece, if you're the one being told that that an employee is ready to take off, that they might be at a point of change, it's really important, if you hear that information, to really listen. At that point, there's probably a lurch in your gut to react defensively, to say, what's wrong with our organization? Why aren't you staying? Right? That's always a gut reaction. But if you're really looking to retain that person, pause on that lurch, right? Sit with it, tolerate it, and see if you can be moved by that person's story as to why they're thinking about moving on. There's always human beings are very rational, they're very logical, right? There's always a reason for why they're doing something. So see if you can enter that space, join in with them on that space. And lastly, act from the best parts of you. This might mean that you might not be the most suitable person to hear that story. You might need to bring in someone else. You might need to connect this person to another individual who have just as much access to institutional power, someone who can make decisions within the organization, and have that person talk to them. And so I think taking a pause rather than reacting right away would be hugely important from a employer's standpoint.
Thank you, Shirley. Candace?
Wow. I love both of those answers so much
Me too.
around the collective effort. And, I think just to add to that piece around what Shirley was saying around the defensive response, and I think sometimes for me, like this question really boils down to organizations being responsive to what is coming to their attention. And then I think, not just hearing it, but then communicating next steps and following through with an action or many actions. And for me, a lot of these things, like it's the opposite of silence and suppression, which is, I think, sometimes the place that, we can go because of that defensive response. But that just leads to broken trust and oppression. And I think it can be hard to have these conversations about retention when the trust is completely broken. So I think those are important pieces to keep in mind. And then I think just thinking about, at a systemic level for organizations, like whatever the action is going to be needs to be specific, and it needs to be measurable, and it needs to be, we're going to be taking a critical look at company culture, just so that people are not like left in some kind of holding pattern, because having been in those situations myself, then you just don't know what's going on. And then, as I said, it just really erodes trust. So those are my 2 cents.
Wow, thank you, ladies. These are awesome. And I know the audience that's listening right now, I hope you have your pen, and I hope you have your paper, and I hope you're taking your notes. If you don't have a pen and paper, I hope you're texting yourself. Send a note to yourself. We're gonna dive into number 3. So question number 3 says, what role does the recruiter play in ensuring that the organization is the right one for the candidate? Helen, I'm going to throw this over to you.
I was waiting for this question. I'm so excited about this one. It's my favorite question. Not that the other ones weren't, but having spent 17 years wearing the recruiter hat, your role will evolve. The way that you see yourself being a part of the universe that is kind of recruitment evolves itself. And so what does the role of a recruiter in ensuring that a candidate understands the organization, ensuring that it's the right one for them? It's the best role to play because there's so many aspects of it. So first of all, building the rapport with a candidate is crucial to, again, defining that must-have list that I was talking about at the beginning of the conversation, and all at the same time building that candid list of, no, Helen, I definitely do not want to be in an organization that has A, B, C, D, so candidly talking about what they are looking for and what they don't want in the next role or in the next organization. So having those candid conversations and being that trusted advisor will more sharply define what that if it's the right organization for the individual. And the recruiter also has information that is valuable in order to ascertain that for the candidate so that the candidate can evaluate not only the role, if it's the right time, but again, the organization itself. And I go back to the relationship piece, which is something that I love in the work that I do, is building those relationships and building that rapport. Because if you don't have that, if it's not an open and trusting relationship, then not a lot of people are going to win.
Thank you, Helen. Oh my God, that is so awesome. And it's so true. Just seeing you work as a member of BIPOC and as a principal, just seeing you work and seeing the passion that you have when we're recruiting new talent for a position. I love seeing that. So thank you for that. Candace, what can you add to this?
Oh gosh. I mean, I've seen Helen in action up close, and everything she just said is so on point, but also just so true. And I mean, I think for me, like, part of the privilege of this role is really to be in a position to facilitate dialogue, right, between organizations and candidates, and to encourage people to explore new possibilities. So, I mean, I'm trying to think what I can add to what Helen already said. And I guess maybe just like a piece around, I think that, you know, some of the initial calls that we have with candidates are kind of like a real opportunity for people to share, you know, areas of strength, areas of interest, but also to really like ask questions, because as you were saying, Helen, we have that valuable information that we can impart. And I think that regardless of whether people are trying to figure out career transition or some other thing, I think really this is about, you know, deep listening. And this is really about, you know, helping people ask the questions they need to ask to figure out whether there is good alignment, and then providing the space for that to happen and the information, and then kind of going from there, really.
Thank you, Candace. Thank you for sure. Shirley, what can you add to this?
Thanks, Stacey Ann. So I love Helen's approach in terms of developing safety and trust. I love Candace's approach in deep listening, because we're there to pull out the best parts of the candidate. For me, the reason why we do that is because we want to make it a dignifying experience for everyone. We know that the people who we talk to have what it takes to determine whether a position is right for them. Right? We don't infantilize anyone. We know that these people are professionals. They have wisdom. They have expertise to draw from. And so all we're doing is we're just setting the stage so that the best parts of you can be broadcasted and spotlit. For me, giving somebody some contextual information, some historical information regarding the position is hugely important. I'm a very collectivistic person, which means context is huge to me, right? Who am I in relationship to other people, to space, to objects in the room, to the landscape, right? Like everything is relational. So I need to know where things are placed so that I can kind of visualize where I can place myself. You know, I go into it in that way. So oftentimes I'll tell people the origin story of the position, who the collaborators are, who are supporters, what are the resources, what's the culture like there. Then a person can make a true assessment and make an informed decision about whether or not they would like to be in this space. And the last piece I'll add is that I often try to bring a sense of mutuality and normalcy to the situation, right? I bring out my humanity and I'll contextualize some of the things that I share by saying, you know, the reason why I'm sharing with you the origin story is because I would want to know, right? I don't want to be put up in a setup situation. A lot of times, racialized, minoritized individuals, they're put in situations where they don't have resources to do their jobs well. And then what ends up happening is that things fall apart and then they get blamed. And so I call that a setup situation. So I'm very careful now in the spaces that I put myself in, because I don't want to be put in that situation.
Wow. Oh my gosh, you ladies are dropping so many important gems. I'm loving all of this. It's like someone watching this and someone who may not even be familiar with the recruitment world would say, okay, so these people are my coach, it's like a guidance counselor, my cheerleader. They see the best in me, because sometimes there are talents that may feel a little bit not that confidence, because, you know, sometimes life, different jobs you go through may knock your confidence a bit. And from what I'm hearing, and I know this is just a brief synopsis of what I'm hearing, is like, you ladies are here to improve on that, to let them know, no, like Jason would say, you're a superstar. Remember, you are a superstar, you know, and we need that. We need that. I'm going to go into number 4. And number 4 goes like this. We've often heard the terms safe space and belonging, and these are used in the context of where we work. While we know there is much that can be discussed on these topics, Are there some common ideas of what a safe space looks and feels like at our place of work, as well as a space where employees feel a sense of belonging? I'm going to bring that over to you, Candace.
This is such a great question. Like, I can't say that enough. And I guess, when I hear that word safe space, I really think about like safer spaces, right? And I think part of that is just because, what's going to be safe for me, it may not be safe for, you, Stacey Ann, or you, Helen, or you, Shirley, because we move through the world in different ways. Safety for me is really about the freedom to express. It's about collaboration. It's about community building. It's also about, for me personally, vulnerability. It's about making mistakes. And I think, thinking about, if I do make a mistake, am I going to be excluded, or am I going to be kind of like guided through that? Also thinking about, can I easily ask for help? And so many times in the environments I've been in the roles I've been in, I'm constantly asking myself, are there people who look like me and share some of the experiences that I have of the world? And I mean, in various roles, I've thought a lot about, self-care. I've thought a lot about collective care. And I've come to this place where, safety and belonging has to include both. A place where I could say what I need, but also a place where we see efforts to include that go right from the top, right? So leadership is really committed to that. And I guess, ultimately in this conversation, I think when I'm talking about safety and belonging, I'm really talking about, care and well-being, right? And I really want to center that and really ask us all to like cultivate spaces that, care for people.
Thank you, Candace. Before I skip over to, I'm going to ask you next, Helen. Before I skip over, you used the term collective care.
Yeah.
I think this is the first time I've heard of that, and I love it. Can you elaborate a little bit on what that is for me, please? No, I love that. We talk about self-care all the time, but collective care, can you please go a little bit into that?
Sure, I will do my very best. So I'll first say that I started researching collective care because I was frustrated with the narrative around self-care. And I'll say like self-care sometimes can be weaponized against people in organizations where, the thinking is you didn't advocate, you didn't say you needed X. And so I think a shift away from that towards collective care, and Helen and Shirley already referenced this in some of their other answers, where, rather than it being the responsibility being pinned to one person or a couple of individuals, it's all of us together, working towards wellness and well-being, and like really thinking about safety and belonging. And really, I think a lot of the thinking behind that is around intentional design, like not just thinking that this is just going to magically happen, but putting effort and time into it. That's what I understand around collective care.
Thank you so much, Candace. I love that. Helen, throw it over to you. What are your thoughts on the question?
I mean, following Candace's is hard. It's hard to do. So what can I add? Oh my goodness. I think what I will add is the definition, or at least where we would define safe space and belonging within an organization. So you can look at it from broadly across the organization. So the entire organization is a safe space. But then, do you spend every day inside of knocking at the CEO's door every day to talk about kind of what you're feeling and what you're seeing? That is why there are groups that many organizations have created. some call them ERG, so employee resource groups, and these are groups where like-minded individuals would find that safe space, that place of support where they can voice what they are feeling, what they're seeing about the organization, about themselves, about the environment, and having that access to dialogue, because that is really what safe space to me, in terms of that definition, is being seen, being heard, where my opinion is valuable, and so what best place to do it with colleagues and peers. And I want to go back to what I said about kind of the organization and knocking on the door to CEOs. That's not what I am suggesting at all to everyone who is watching. But it goes to one of the comments that Candace has already made around that top-down approach in having organizations who are invested in ensuring that there is that collective wellness, that place where you can be yourself and bring your whole self to it, and perform to the best capability, because you're not hiding behind a different persona while walking through the doors.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Helen. Shirley, what can you add to that?
Thanks,
If you can
DCN.
add anything.
So it's a challenge. So when I can't add anything, I weave. So here I go weaving. So, Helen and Candace had already touched a great deal on what collective care, building collective culture, well-being looks like already. When I have those pieces, right, this is when I can be my most authentic self. This is when I'm invited and allowed to bring in difference. This is when I can bring in my cultural wisdom, cultural assets, and I can just lay it all on the table and knowing that it will land safely. And also when I have collective care, I know that I will have somebody to go to when I have those imposter syndrome moments. Right, Stacey,
Yes.
you taught me that. There are moments, right? I often say I have imposter syndrome. But she's like, no, moments. I'm like, that's true, because tomorrow I'm going to feel so in my power. So, these things come and go. So, that's the power of collective care. I know that when I'm having these moments, I can go to Stacey Ann and be like, hey, I'm having these thoughts. Tell me that I am good enough to be here. And she's readily available. I do the same with Helen and Candace all the time. And lastly is something I learned from my mentor is you are very much allowed to speak directly to your supervisor, your manager, whoever you're reporting to, and to say, in order to retain me, you must give me ... right? In order to support me, to allow me to feel a sense of belongingness, you need to speak up on my behalf when you witness a microaggression. Right? Or you need to back up my ideas when I say something so that somebody else doesn't say the same thing and then their ideas get taken. So I never knew that I could ask some of these things. But if you do have that sense of safety and trust with your supervisor, especially if they say, I'm going to be your ally, if they use the A word, right? If I'm going to be your support, then you're going to need to hold them accountable and tell them exactly what it needs to become your ally, to show up for you.
Absolutely. I'm loving all of this. We're going to get into question number 5, and I know we're having questions from the audience as well. So I want to make sure that we're on time with this. So we're going to go into question number 5, and thank you, Shirley, Candace, and Helen for answering number 4. I thank you so much. And I know the audience is definitely taking down these important gems. So question number 5. Organizations may not be able to change culture overnight to ensure that a place of belonging is strengthened, but are there a few things that can be done right away to enhance belonging within an organization? Helen.
So Sure, there are a few things that organizations can do to enhance belonging. I think when we speak to leaders, or you're an individual in a leadership role, and have individuals who are there to support you, one of the things that are important to do is to be available. Not let an email go unanswered for longer than a day. Even a simple, can I get back to you tomorrow? Or can we schedule some time within the week to discuss? It's been pretty busy and you kind of know that already. But that simple act will let them know that they are included, when they do belong there, on your team, and in that organization. So that feeling of that readiness and availability as a leader, that's definitely something that will be that will help an organization enhance their belonging.
Thank you. Candace?
Yeah, I really heard that, Helen, when you said be available. Yeah, that is such and I think just connected to that, I think my thoughts are around that were just like checking in, and again, maybe that seems to be, an obvious point, but I think actively checking in, especially that first little while when people are starting, and then remembering to do it as, a year in, and then also like embedding that in the things that you already do. So do you have regular one-on-one sessions? You can ask about how things are going, but you can also use it as an opportunity to see if there is a need or a support or something of that nature. If you have team meetings, the same is true there. I really think connecting it to some existing thing so that it is just becomes embedded in the culture is really, important. And I think for me, like personally, thinking about things that I've experienced in workplaces and, currently, even at BIPOC, like thinking about, mentoring, thinking about opportunities to share skills, like, are there also opportunities if you see somebody really loves doing something or they've expressed an interest in trying something new, like, encourage them to try new skills as well. And and one other thing that I'll say is just, a simple thing for me personally, but just, brainstorming sessions with colleagues. So, I love being asked, and I try to practice doing the asking. And why I mention that is like, these are small check-in points, but they always give me a boost. And it's a small thing, but I think these small things add up. And that kind of mutuality really helps me to feel less isolated in terms of work. So that's what I would say, Stacey Ann.
Absolutely. Thank you, Candace. Going over to you, Shirley.
Thanks, Stacey Ann. So in talking to the members of our firm around this question, one of our colleagues, Laurie Toulouse, raised a really good question, and it piggybacks really nicely on Candace's last point about if you're an employer, just ask your employees what it is that they need to feel a sense of belongingness. It sounds simple, but there's so many times where employers tend to have this thought experiment, making assumptions about what their employees might need, or they're fearful of asking, wondering about repercussions. We're saying if you're working with marginalized folks, just ask them rather than make assumptions and assume that you know what it is that they need, and then match them up to the suitable opportunities. I love the piece where Candace talked about mentorship. That's huge for me. That's easy for an employer. Either, if you're tight in budget, find somebody within your team to offer that kind of mentorship. If you do have the budget, offer executive coaching or mentorship and pay for it for your employees. And the last piece I will say is that having rituals for people to engage in self-care and rejuvenation so that they don't burn out or routinely fall ill is really important. I love it at our firm. We have mental health Mondays. So half our Mondays, right at the start in the morning, we're given time to review emails. That's it. We're told don't book calls. Try your best not to. Let's not book meetings. Let's have an easy way into Monday. And then during the summer times, we have half-day Fridays. And we're strongly encouraged to, I'm going to use Jason's word, play hooky. He understands the power dynamic, right? Like I would never go to him and say, I'm going to play hooky. But the fact that he used that word first, right? Giving us permission, that says a lot, right? So I feel like those are easy ways for employers to start engaging belongingness.
Oh my gosh, these are so great. These answers are awesome. Thank you, ladies, for answering that. We're going to get to the last question before my surprise question. Okay. And we've got 10 minutes. But so for number 6, the pandemic brought about many changes in the workplace, particularly the option of working from home. Now that the world is slowly reopening and the option to work from home may not be available to all, how can employees who saw home as a positive for their sense of balance and mental health reintegrate back into the workplace while maintaining their well-being? Starting with you, Helen.
Thank you for that question. It's, I guess we're still in it, so you can't escape the pandemic question, huh? I mean, it's a great question for both individuals, but also organizations to get a good sense as to what will be next. And I think what I would offer is the organization's point of view. So there. The time is now to work with your organization. I mean, it always has been, but definitely now as we start to slowly integrate and pilot this welcoming back into the office environment. And I think it's important to do is work with the organization and not against. So as much as you have you have comfort in your own space, in your own home, and have potentially become accustomed to it. It's important to see the other side of the coin and give it a shot. Give it an actual shot. You may be feeling like you will be kind of isolated. You can feel isolated at home. So go back with your colleagues. Give it a chance. Piloting this hybrid model is not easy for organizations, and so I think that's what I would offer. Really seeing those possibilities, and then having that conversation as to, is it working? Why not, and be candid about that, and that would be kind of what I would offer at this point.
Thanks, Helen. Candace?
Okay, thanks for that on the hybrid model, Helen. I was gonna mention that as well. I think one of the things that I want to first acknowledge is that I think there may be people who didn't see home as positive for their balance and mental health, and
that's true.
That's important too. And then I'll return to the question, but I just wanted to really say that. Going back to the question, I think we went from working outside of the home to working at home so quickly, without a lot of time to transition or adjust. At least that was my experience of it, but I think that was many people's experience of it. And then all of a sudden it was just, Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting and a lot of Zoom fatigue. And so I guess really what I have to offer is that, reversing this is going to require some time and space and conversation and the development of new routines and just figuring out, a new balance. But that's going to come through conversation, and that's going to come through maybe owning what your needs are and communicating that and going slow in a fast, culture that we live in. And some of that has to do with, capitalism and a lot of other factors. But I think just whatever ways we can slow things down a little will be important for all of us.
Thank you, Candace. Over to you, Shirley. And I just want to note that we have about 6 minutes left. But yeah, this talk is awesome.
Sounds good. So I think a lot of BIPOC folks or people, the global majority, for those who work in predominantly white spaces, there's a sense of apprehension of having to face emotional taxation, racial battle fatigue, microaggressions, right? Those things might be anticipating and embracing for it. And so I'm going to go back to an earlier point where I talked about building affinity spaces, developing your own informal advisory council, and go back to those people, go back for regular feedings. So ensure that there's a good balance between showing up who you are at work and then showing up in your most authentic self in the people who can see you, hear you, and feel you.
Thank you, Shirley. Thank you. Wow. Ladies, thank you so much for your time today. It is so appreciated. I love being in conversation with you. My last question for you is this. So we know that our company is approaching its 1-year anniversary, and these are truly exciting times for us. Being that we're all like respectfully a partner, a consultant, and principal at the company, what is one word? Just one word that will sum up your experience working with BIPOC Executive Search Inc. so far. I'm going to take that question to myself first. And because I asked it was a surprise question, I'm going to say my word is family. You all have created a sense of family, a sense of belonging, and a sense of a safe space for me. At least once a week, we have a meeting, sometimes twice. And we check in with each other. We check in on the projects that we're working on, and we offer so much support. And you ladies are here. You know what it's like. It's so exciting for me. It's so beautiful for me. Every time I leave that meeting, I leave so inspired and motivated. And so I want to say that for me, it is definitely, my one word is family. I'm going to take it to you, Shirley. What is your one word?
Affirmed. I can only be me because everyone is being themselves here. So affirmed is my word.
Wow. Thank you. Helen?
This is what is a surprise question, Stacey-Ann, please. There are so many words that I can think of. I think the one word is here. It is being present, and that's what the word here represents for me. Is being present, is doing the work and doing it now.
Thank you. Over to you, Candace.
I think maybe the word or the image that kind of came to mind is something around expansion. So I feel like expanded in this experience, even this experience we're having together right now, like just a tremendous sense of trust and belonging, and that, I can bring myself, that I can be, authentic, and that there are so many things to try and to brainstorm. And whenever we are in community together, as you often mention, Shirley, or, we laugh together, or we're dreaming up the next opportunity, I feel a deep sense of, contentment that goes alongside of that. So yes, my word is expanded.
Thank you for that. We have time for one question, but I want the audience to know that if we don't answer your question during the live, we always answer it on the live itself. That's on our LinkedIn, on our YouTube, and our Facebook. We go there and we answer the question. So if we don't get to answer it, we will put the answer to the question there. One question, and anyone can take this, is workplace bullying included in the belonging and inclusion? That was one of the questions we got. Anyone can take this right now. Shirley?
Yeah, short answer is I would say yes. Anything that's interpersonally related, between yourself and another person, or between yourself and the system, right, which is the organization itself. If they are not allowing you to be a human being, right? You don't feel dignified there. You don't feel respected. You're constantly thwarted or challenged, or put down, right? These are it's our human right to have dignity. And so if that's not there, then you don't have inclusion or belongingness. So I would say I would include that in there too.
Thank you so much, Shirley. We're gonna get ready to wrap up, and I just want to say thank you to the audience that tuned in. Thank you so much for joining us on this Wednesday afternoon, and I hope we left you with gems and things that you're definitely going to move forward to inspire you and to motivate you, whether you're in your position right now or you want to switch positions or you're thinking about moving forward. We've left you with some gems that you can use. Ladies, thank you so much for your time, for your energy today. I respect and honor you, and you are like family to me working with you. So again, thank you so much for your time. So the audience, feel free to connect with us on social media. We're on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, you name it, we're there, and we're always here to answer your questions. Have a marvelous afternoon, or in the words of my 2-year-old, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.